Welcome to the ninth grade experience. I'm your host, Chris Dutchko. As a teacher of freshmen and one of our freshman mentor committee faculty advisors, I spend a lot of my school day thinking about and helping students with the successful transition from middle school to the halls of Emmaus High School. The goal of this podcast is to give you the story of the ninth grade here at Emmaus High School through the people who live it daily, the students and staff. We will attempt to touch on the real issues and stories that ninth grade students face, ranging from academics to athletics, technical school, and just trying to find your way as one person in a community of approximately 2,700 students. We will also look to speak with some of the influential staff members who play a key part in a student's ninth grade year. It is the hope that future ninth grade students and their families can use the tips and insights provided here to begin making connections to their potential new school and learn more about the day-to-day lives of the students that they will one day become and realize from day one that ninth grade counts. You can learn more about this episode and all of the episodes of the ninth grade experience by following us on Twitter at EHSFMC or at Chris Stutchko, or following the hashtag EHS9counts, or our website, sites.google.com/eastpennsd.org/ninth grade experience. Before we jump into today's topic, let's thank our sponsor for this show, the East Penn Education Foundation. This podcast has been made possible through a $1,000 grant awarded to teachers like me each year who are attempting to do unique projects in the area of science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. The foundation supports programs that put learning in motion by giving students the tools they need to think actively in a complex and changing world. You can follow them on Facebook at EPSD Education Foundation, on Twitter at EPSD EdFound, or on Instagram at EPSD Ed Foundation. Now on to the show. So welcome to this week's episode of the Ninth Grade Experience podcast. We have two people with us that have now chosen to come on this show for the third time. So I don't know what it is. I don't know if they want to be part of the permanent rotation here. If they, I don't think it's because they're home and they have nothing else better to do. But this is Demchak and Mr. McInerney are back with us for another week. They reached out because with all the craziness going on right now, they wanted to reach out, be visible to the entire ninth grade population and kind of talk about some of the issues that are going on. And since the last time we tried to set this up, we've announced what our fourth marking period grading is going to look like. So we're going to get into that today throughout this episode. So thanks for coming back for the to be part of the 3-time club. I don't know if you get like some sort of a medal or plaque or something for it, but congratulations.
Thanks.
Thanks very much.
Are we the first ones? First triple?
Well, you guys were the first people to come back as 2-time like full episode guests. You did the episode at the beginning of the year, and then we had the March Career Readiness Week,
right,
which was supposed to be the month, and we you guys came on with Miss Grimm about that. So this will be your third full time. I know Dr. Kiris has been on twice. She had a full episode and did a little bit of the Thanksgiving stuff. Actually, Mrs. Demchak, you might have been on that one too. So this might be your fourth overall appearance here. So you're really racking it up here. You're gonna have to get like producer credits or something at the end here.
I wouldn't go that far, but thanks for the accolades. I appreciate them.
So let's just kind of start off with some general thoughts here. And it's interesting, like, people are wondering, we talked last week with Miss Hendershot, who's one of our school nurses, and Mr. Anoni, who's our assistant principal. And we're trying to figure out, like, so you're not in general contact with the students, but what are your days looking like? And we talked a little bit before we came on about how crazy busy they are. But so what are you actually right now as school counselors doing for students, and what are your days kind of looking like?
Mr. McInerney, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll just throw something out there if you want to piggyback. Sure. Even before this podcast started up, we just talked about how our responsibilities have changed. Some of them are similar. Obviously, we're here for student support, and we've met with students, either video chat, a lot of communication via email to students, parents, and faculty. But I think a lot of what we were also talking about is the back end support, the things that people don't see and understand, whether it's career readiness or scholarships. There's still programs and things that we need to keep afloat and running from a building perspective, even beyond student support.
Exactly. And I will just give a plug since you gave me that great lead in. Career readiness is still happening. Mr. McInerney and I actually emailed all of our students last week a screencast that each of us did for our students to just kind of go through the last two career readiness activities that we had planned to do in the English classes. We only got to 3 classrooms. So students, you can definitely log on and get those things done. So yeah, that's one big thing that is happening. The other really big thing that's happening, in addition to the volumes of email, is the master schedule. Students still want to have a schedule when they come to school in the fall. And we're really working hard behind the scenes to try to be as on task and as current with our timeline as we can be, despite having to do it from home. And it is a monstrous task. But
And that's actually been a question that several students have asked in like Google Meets and other questions and other settings like that is like, so what is, I know it's crazy to think about next year already, but we are proceeding to build a schedule that will start off the next school year just like we do every other year. And if you're a ninth grader, you probably don't know that process. You've been through a lot of it already because the kids ask me, they're like, so how do I get am I going to get anything else for my classes? And I'm like, well, you've already been through 3 rounds of that.
correct.
So we're basically at the point now where you as the counselors this is where a lot of your behind the scenes work is with the scheduling, is where you're just kind of beginning to plug stuff in, seeing how many classes of each thing we have, like for our ninth graders that might want to go to LCTI, getting that stuff in order. So schedules are being built with the intention that we are going to be back to business as usual on August 31st next year, I would guess, right?
Absolutely. I mean, just, a couple other things, we've reviewed overrides. We're looking at testing out. We're also working on GIP meetings for rising ninth graders. I can tell you this morning I had 2 back-to-back meetings for students that are in 8th grade outside the district. So I held 2 pre-registration meetings to pick courses for next year for students who are still in middle school. So all of those pieces along the way. LCTI, we're still wrapping up applications. LCTI has even started an electronic format, so we're communicating with families if they've actually missed the application process. I just sent one out for a half day. I just sent one out for full day academic center. So lots of moving pieces behind the scenes.
Exactly. And to kind of piggyback off of that course scheduling, like right now we're adding up all the requests and trying to figure out, how many teachers do we have and how many, sections will there be, and all those things that come into, hopefully hitting all of the requests for as many of the students as we possibly can. And of course, we know there will be a small population that may not get everything. And then we're going to have to make a contact with them to see if we can kind of, put something else in there, maybe do an alternate elective choice. So there are a lot of moving parts right now. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, so students that are listening and parents that are listening too, hopefully they now understand that we are proceeding, we're building for next year, and when we're trying to make sure all that stuff's happening, just because I know what we're saying is just because we're not in the building, school isn't over, and it's certainly not over for the counselors and for all these people that are doing some of the behind the scenes stuff there. So that's kind of one question that people have had a lot of. But getting back to like stuff that's going on right now. So today is Monday, April 20th when we're recording this. So it is technically the start of the 4th marking period. There was a lot of communication sent out the previous week about what school is going to look like for the rest of the year. So we do know now that we are doing a technical 4th marking period. We know that our last day is going to be June 11th. And we know that some of this, some of the different things that are now going on with our schedule for the rest of the year. So would either of you like to kind of just give a brief kind of overview or rundown of like, so I'm a student, I'm sitting at home. It's the 4th marking period. Why should I continue to keep doing work other than for the glory of earning knowledge and bettering my education?
Well, I'll start, and Mr. McInerney can certainly piggyback off of me. First and foremost, for continuity of coursework. Okay, that we've been working through that program of studies. That many courses have prerequisites that we would like to kind of recommend for students in order for success at the next course level. And so definitely, fourth marking period, that is essentially 20 to 25% of the course. So we certainly want students to be engaged so that they can gain that knowledge to be as prepared as possible for our people, our ninth graders, for moving on to 10th grade. The other thing that I think is really nice is that our district really put a very thoughtful approach into what we're going to do with regard to fourth quarter. Many districts in the area are keeping fourth quarter as a pass-fail option, but we actually have a kind of an incentive program, if you will, for our students, whereby they are able to increase their final grade for the year. And so I hope students understand that even though fourth quarter is being marketed as a pass-fail option, the amount of engagement that students have in that fourth marking period can definitely help to boost up their grade level. Some of our students are going to need to do that in order to pass for the year.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you have right now perhaps an overall average of like 55 or 56%, if you are actively engaged in fourth quarter doing everything that you can as a student, reaching out to your teachers, asking them what you can still turn in, completing all of those assignments in the fourth quarter, you have, a very good option of potentially passing a course. And then on the other side, I know we have a lot of ninth graders who are concerned because they might have been on the borderline, maybe between a B and a C. And they're like, oh man, now I just needed like 2 percentage points to get that B. Fourth quarter is your opportunity to really be able to engage and get that accomplished. Reach out sooner as opposed to later. Find out from your teachers what you can do to kind of get that moving so that you know what you need to do and you can attain that goal.
So very briefly, the way that the fourth quarter is kind of set up, and you've talked about that, it's the pass-fail option or pass-fail. And then to get the bonus points that we're talking about, there are different stipulations that the students need to meet in order to qualify for them. So it's not an automatic that if you get a pass in the fourth marking period that you get the 5 points. There are different levels that you need to reach in order to begin to be eligible for the points. I know one of them is that you need to complete at least 70% of the work for that marking period. So to pass for the fourth marking period, you need 60%. But then to be eligible for some of these incentive points, you need to get 70%. And then there are other factors as well too. So can you kind of just tell the students what else? And I think you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but what else should students be doing during the fourth marking period that will, let's not use the word grade, but will make them eligible for those extra points?
Okay, well, one of the other things is meeting the targeted learning objectives. So, Mr. Stuchko, as a teacher, you know that that's part of the feedback that you're giving to the students on the assignments that are being posted on Monday. And then for, I believe, most teachers, they're being asked to be submitted by Friday. And so engaging in that feedback, looking for ways to improve on that. So perhaps doing like a revision to something, or maybe, for a math set of problems, or a homework, resubmitting those with corrections so that you can gain some more points.
And just before you jump in there, I think that's been one of the things, and I don't know, Mr. McInerney, if you've heard this as well too, but one of the things that I'm noticing as a teacher is once the stuff has been turned back in with the feedback, is that a lot of our students are not acting on that feedback, and they're not really following up. Either of you, has anyone like reached out or like kind of asked any questions about that part of it on any end? Because I'm feeling that like we're doing all this giving of feedback, but I don't know if the kids are actually using it yet. And hopefully they understand that if they take this feedback to meet the learning targets, that's something that could incentivize them as well during this fourth marking period.
Well, I would hope that students take advantage of obtaining the feedback. It's not as if there was no level of technology in these classrooms to begin with. So even prior to what's going on with COVID-19, kids have Chromebooks, they have access to technology, Google Classroom, but just tossing it out there. Even with my own daughter, she's working on something in a research paper, and I'm asking her, and she was confused on something, and just simple as, well, they email the teacher. Well, not yet. So, I mean, I even see it personally as a father. So I would have thought that because a lot of our kids are working in Google Classroom, that it would be a little more natural. And my daughter's a great student, but just maybe not taking advantage of that, where teachers are available, they have office hours, and they're definitely there to provide feedback and offer support. Whether our students are taking full advantage of it, maybe that's a larger question, but I hope that they know that teachers are there and willing to help.
I would agree. I'm not sure that maybe the students at this point realize how important a role that is and how that could potentially play into their final grade. I do think that we'll probably see more of those inquiries like this week and next week, especially now that the grading guidelines have come out for the fourth quarter.
Right.
I have, been in touch with, some teachers, even over the weekend with regard to this situation. And I know that teachers are really trying to do their best to get that out there. I even know Mr. Stuchko actually kind of did a little bit of a blurb for his students to kind of let them know what is expected and how students can kind of gain some of those incentive points. And certainly that interaction and checking in at those office hours, all those little things start to add up. And the teacher, who's on the end at the end of the year looking overall is going to say, wow, you know what? I saw this student, they gave their best. I'm definitely confident of that, and be able to award those incentive points at that time.
So we've talked a lot about those incentive points, but the way that we're calculating our final grade for the year has kind of changed. Normally we do 20% for each quarter and 10% for each of the exams, since we have 2 each year. But we are not having final exams, which has been, told several times, but just a reminder, if you didn't know, we're not having final exams. But what does that look like for the grading now? So like, technically speaking, the final grade for the year will be calculated in a couple weeks based on the close of the third marking period. So how are the students how are their overall grades now being calculated?
So now the way it's going to be calculated is quarter 1, quarter 2, and quarter 3 will be weighted 30%, and the midterm exam will be weighted 10%.
So basically what you're looking at is the third marking period technically closed last Friday on the 17th. So at this point, in theory, you can kind of calculate all of your final grades. And I read today that there is possibility of a way that maybe students will be able to know those final grades, I think in May, so that they could possibly know like kind of what they need to get. But I know in some of the sessions that I've had with like in Google Meet, I've been showing students that, on our end as teachers and as counselors, we have like a magical column that they can't see that kind of calculates their grade for them. So I've been showing students that magical column so they kind of get a sense in all their classes, like kind of what that looks like. So, you can do a little bit of Power School sleuthing at home if you want to kind of calculate that with 30 and 10 and 30. But it's not going to be a surprise. Like you'll know your final grade for the year in May, and then you have all of May and June to earn those extra points as you kind of go forward and kind of can add to that kind of stuff. So it's an interesting format of kind of how it is. And like Mrs. Demchak was saying, not a lot of school districts are doing it. So it's kind of interesting. Do we know like why they decided to do that? Like, is that just something? It's a neat idea. It's kind of interesting. I wonder, was there like some sort of like reason for kind of throwing that incentive out there that you guys are aware of?
I do believe that that goes kind of hand in hand with the approach that our district has taken with this whole COVID-19 situation from the beginning, that we're really trying to be very sympathetic of what people might be going through, as behind the scenes, like we talked about at the beginning of this podcast. Like when I get onto a Google Meet with a student, I essentially have no idea what is going on with them. I really don't know if they have family members who are dealing with this, or they have parents that have been furloughed or laid off, or any possibility of combination. There's lots of anxiety over like what's going to happen. This is so unusual, and so there's so many different things that could be affecting a student or a family. And so I think that's part of the reason why we took that approach. to kind of give them a little bit of a buy into it, to not have it be a situation where students kind of throw their hands up in the air and say, oh, well, like it is what it is. I can't do anything about it. So to empower students to maybe feel like they have a little bit of control in this situation that is like pretty much out of their control right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's been a couple different factors that that have gone into that, and it was not done haphazardly. There was definitely a lot of thought behind it.
Yeah, I mean, this whole situation is multifaceted, and we've covered a lot of it. But what parents are going through and families, and ultimately, the worst situation would be to come down ill. But people losing their jobs. Kids are home from school, so we even talk about how it impacts us as educators, how we're trying to support students and faculty and parents, why we have to deal. I shouldn't say deal. Let's correct that or delete that out of there, Mr. Stuchko. But to be able to support our families as well, and to support our children, because they're also learning from home as well.
Well, and I think it is something, and I think even saying deal with, I think a lot of people are struggling to deal with a lot of the different stuff. And I know one of the other reasons that Mrs. Demchak and Mr. McInerney reached out because they wanted to come on were kind of, all this grading stuff is great and fantastic. And I know we have to kind of talk about that part of it because that's, what a lot of people are really focused on. But I think the main reason that you wanted to reach out at the beginning of this was kind of just like, kind of talking about like, going through all those different things, like you're around family that you're not around with all the time, or you're in a situation that maybe is not the greatest situation, or I had a student reach out to me and just kind of say like, hey, like I'm struggling with this, like what can I do? And it's a student that's not necessarily somebody that's very vocal and doesn't reach out all the time about help, but like this is a situation that even like no matter what level of student that you are currently, no matter what level of class you're in, this is affecting everybody a lot differently. And obviously we're not out and about to see people, but like, we don't even know, like there are like almost 3,000 people in our building, students, and we have no idea really how it's affecting those people. So as we kind of like go forward with this, do you have like any tips or strategies? I know obviously they can reach out to the counselors and they can kind of do stuff like that, but what would you recommend for students that are kind of like trying to figure this all out? And in addition to the academics, which are obviously important, like our students like mental and physical well-being is also super critical at this time.
I would say number one, and I'm guilty of this as well. I thrive off of a schedule, so me not going to work in an office is very challenging for me. So I'm not saying this for other people because I have this mastered. I mean, it's something that I need to work on, and that would be time management and looking at a schedule and making sure that I have scheduled breaks off the computer or to work out and do some housework, or even take an hour to sit down with the kids and check in with them and make sure, lunch is on the table. Just trying to maintain some level of consistency, because now that we're in this open-ended situation with no clear definitive end in sight. So I would say, not just because it would be useful for students, but I know me personally, just trying to come up with some type of schedule might be useful for everyone.
Right. And echoing that, I would agree 110%. I've fallen to it myself. My new office has become the basement, and I'm oftentimes like coming down here and 2, 3, 4 hours are going by before I'm getting my butt off the couch in my makeshift desk. So yes, definitely it's important to have a schedule. I think equally important is for students to realize that it's like it's okay to not be okay.
Right.
Like we've never planned for this. No one has ever gone through something like this. And so it would be, completely irresponsible of us to be like, yeah, you know what, like this is no big deal. It's a very big deal. I think the most important thing is just, knowing that there are people that you can reach out to for support. There are definite things to try to build into your day, your schedule. Like Mr. McInerney was saying, I heard him mention about exercising and spending time, with his kids, with your family, engaging however you can with your friends, whether that be through social media, texting. I've resorted to sending people electronic cards, or just like regular, like note cards in the mail, like old school, We call that.
Yeah.
But, getting a book of stamps and, like, sending some people a card, it makes you feel good and it makes them feel good. So things like that, I think are really, really important. The other thing I will talk about with teenagers, Mr. McInerney and I both have, sophomores, like that sleep schedule. It's so important, and it is I hate to admit this, but it's a daily battle in my house. Please get to bed at a normal time. Please get up at a normal time. I am trying to, provide a positive example, but you know what? Some days are better than others in this household.
And it's really interesting you say that, because last week, Miss Hendershot, one of our school nurses who was on with us, kind of talked about that, getting into a good routine and getting up at the same time. But it's really interesting because I fall into this as well too. So you have three people here that are admitting to you that we're not good. We're working on the skills that we're asking you to work on. So even as adults, we're working on it. But, there was one night, it was a night where I was doing the feedback for students, and I was doing it late at night because it's quiet in my house and my kids are asleep and my wife's asleep. And it's time that I can focus. And it was close to midnight the one night I was doing it. And of all the times that I have provided feedback to students, the only time that I got an instant response from a student is when I gave them the feedback at close to midnight. I got responses back right away. It also intrigued me to maybe do a Google Meet at midnight, but I don't know if the school district would really look good on that. But that's not the time that you should be doing your work. I know that is when people are up and awake, but at the same time, like, being productive at midnight is not the best way to do that. And that's from somebody that was working at midnight and saw what was going on. But that blew me away. Like, we're here trying to give kids feedback. And the only time I got a response back, I have these Google Meets during the day when nobody's coming. And then at night, when I respond back to a student, they literally responded back in real time at I think it was 11:55 PM. So, and they weren't just finishing the assignment there. So that sleep schedule and that getting on a routine thing is so critical right now that I think a lot of people are just kind of overlooking that.
Right.
Is there, as we kind of push forward here, and who knows, maybe you'll want to come back again at the end of the year here to update us on the scheduling. I don't know. You want to go into for the fourth time, but is there anything, as we kind of get ready to wrap up here, we talked about a lot of things in here. We talked about, academics. We talked about your social and emotional well-being and those kinds of things too. But as if there's anything you want to, let's do this one first. So if a parent is listening, because, parents will listen to this as well too. If I'm a parent listening right now, what should I be focusing on, or what should I be thinking about with my 9th grade student?
I think, as a parent myself, one of the best pieces of advice I can give is to try to ask some of those W questions, like, the who, the what, the where, when, the why, and the how, when you are conversing with your son or your daughter. So, how did online learning go today? What were some of the challenges? When do you think, you're going to have your next Google Meet? Some of those things that you can, start some conversations with your kids. If you are a parent, try to really get them onto that schedule, like Mr. McInerney said, and we all admitted it's difficult. It's very difficult, but the consistency of a routine is so important, especially for teenagers. And then I guess my third point would be to reach out. Reach out if you have a question. Reach out if you are concerned. Reach out if you are frustrated. We have tons and tons of resources that are available. Sometimes it's just nice to be able to vent out to another adult, maybe get some affirmations like, hey, it's going to be okay. And then get some suggestions to implement a plan.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I mean, just to end real quick, I mean, the one thing that popped into my mind is we all just need to remember to be kind to one another, with our kids. I mean, I know it's very easy to be frustrated. I know myself trying to juggle this online gig, and then I have a 6-year-old, to each other, family, friends, colleagues. I think we're all stuck in our own microcosm at the same time, experiencing a world pandemic, but just trying to step back, take a breath, and be kind to one another.
And then as we kind of close up here, so we have advice for parents, and then we've given a lot of advice to students, but if you're going to give them the boil it down to the basics, what are like a couple of things that we could tell students here as we kind of close up that they should be looking for the remainder of the school year here, as the weather gets warmer and maybe we're kind of trying to figure out, like, do I want to do this assignment, like motivation wise and that kind of stuff. So any last words for our students as they kind of move forward here?
Just real quick, and Ms. Demchak, you can piggyback, but you had already said this, but continuity of learning. We will open up at some point, and there needs to be some carryover, bridging of concepts onto other courses that have prerequisites and skills, and just straight up work ethic. Just being in the routine of getting work done. And remember, we need to pass classes. We need to earn credit. We have graduation requirements. So. Just if I could sum that up, I don't know what else you would add to that.
I would definitely agree that there's definite importance to the fact that, like, it's not summer yet, and keeping up that routine as much as possible. And I would like to kind of end with what Mr. McInerney said, like, just being kind, to everyone, and recognizing that we are all in this together. We will all get through this together, and we're all here to support each other.
Yeah, and I hope that kind of comes through, like through all the different supports that our counseling department is offering, all the different supports that are available through the school, tech supports, what the teachers are trying to do, that we all are trying to work through this together. And, if there are some bumps along the way, it's like, no one planned for this. When we left on March 12th and came in for that day on March 13th, nobody said, you know what, we're probably not coming back for the rest of the year. So let's try to plan the year in one day. So we're all trying to do this together. And it's a great message that we're left with here. So once again, thanks to Mrs. Demchak and Mr. McInerney for dropping in to speak with us here. If you need to contact them, you can email them. Their emails are fully functional. They don't have a way to get your phone calls, but email them. They're available, not like all hours of the day. Like, they're not going to answer your email at midnight.
No,
but
I'm sleeping at midnight.
Yeah, during the workday, they're available. And remember, they're getting hundreds of emails. So if you email them and you don't hear back within 5 minutes, it's not because they don't care. It's because there's 99 other people that they're probably caring about before they get to you. So just keep that in mind when you email them or reach out to anybody for help and support during this time. So thanks a lot. And we'll talk. Maybe we'll talk to you again before the end of the school year. Who knows? Come back for the fourth time.
Sounds good.